Folks, do you ever take time off from the busy world and just sit in front of the fireplace thinking back to other days, to good times and old friends? Sure you do.
Backtrack, turn back, right, lights, be so rough. Time is tough.
Bannerlord. Fundamentally the most sophisticated version of Agario the world has ever seen. But instead of small, colourful balls swallowing each other, armies go around and trade blows to each other's infrastructure to literally no avail. Today's video follows the long and virtuous story of Themistocles Antinoble and how he went from rags and mule to being able to kill most of the enemy army by himself. Calradia, what is it? Where is it? Who lives there? These are all great questions, all of which I have the answers to. Calradia is a land occupied by 6 different countries.
Choose your fighter.
We have Russia, Scotland, Canada, the United States of America, China, and Saudi Arabia. These lands have seen many horrors and atrocities committed by the USA, which basically means everybody hates them. And Scotland for some reason. Each country is made up of factions, and those factions made up of nobles. What are nobles? They're the billionaires of society, with shiny armor and nice horses. They're the ones that delay your health insurance and command the armies. I am here to end every single noble life on this map. There's a total of 1,000 nobles to begin with, and as time goes on, they only multiply. In order to do this, I need to start my own faction and essentially become my own noble. One, to rule them all. I need to stay light on my feet, so I can run away from armies I cannot defeat, and catch up to armies I can defeat. This means never carrying prisoners, things I don't need, and putting everything, even my troops, on workhorses. The key to gaining quick success in this strategy is to go with the Botanian background so that your movement speed is not restricted when marching through forests. The second key is to get an army balanced with the best units for each discipline. For this playthrough, my troops will be made up of Sturgeon line breakers from Canada, the Imperial Legionaries from the USA, my archers will be the Scottish Botanian Fian champions, and my cavalry will be the one and only Vlandian Banner Knights from Russia. Picture this, you're being mugged in central London. You put up a small fight, but your attacker pulls out a knife. Then, in some kind of cinematic moment, the Banner Knights come cruising over the horizon. You find a sense of relief until you realise the Banner Knights have killed your attacker and you. These Russian units were the original Wagner group, and Yevgeny Prigozhin would have been extremely proud. No unit in this game is as openly menacing as these, which will be my secret weapon to defeating larger armies and keeping my map movement speed high.
Surprise, motherfuckers.
So where do we start? Fast forwarding through the storyline, someone kidnapped my family, which I took personally. Not only did the kidnapper eventually help me locate my family, but I decided to kill them, only to get my shoulders warmed up as this executioner's axe is going to be f***ing busy. First, we must start by leveling up our clan tier so that we can carry more units in our party. This is done by hunting looters, winning tournaments, and doing a couple of jobs here and there. After winning several tournaments, Themistocles Antinoble was decked out and ready for some serious combat. In order to gain a large amount of kills on the map, a good trick is to keep distance from the enemy. And since archery is a simpish activity for little boys scared to get their dicks wet, I will use a polearm. No, not a severed limb from a Polish person, I'm talking about a spear, and preferably one that swings. This is the billhook, a weapon dreamed up by only the most cowardly yet menacing and genuinely disturbed creature that yearns only for the noise it makes when removing one's head from one's body. Heading up to clan tier 2, we now have a party capacity of 46, so I went on a recruitment spree and tried to fill these positions with Vlandian squires to train them up to be Banner Knights. I'll also need these units to help me when escorting merchant caravans. We're still not going to do much damage to a nobles party with 46 men, so for the next 5 hours I grinded my clan tier while salivating over the thought of swinging my executioner's axe once more. During this grind I realised I can declare war on smaller factions that aren't yet allied to 2 other kingdoms. Unfortunately for Archimendos of the Hand, he will be the first to die. Archimendos is like Poland in 1939, very much caught in the crosshairs of my plans to conquer. My tactic here was to scope out enemy units and positioning by doing my own reconnaissance, and then positioning my troops around them to bring home the gold. This is why the billhook is overpowered. I can dwindle the enemy army numbers to the point of them breaking, before even getting my own troops involved. Next, I was able to track down Lossis of the Hand. While our armies had similar numbers, mine were clearly out studying the blade, while they were out having premarital sex. Neoson, my brother, got married. Heading up to the next clan tier, I decided to start hunting some bigger fish. I declared war on another smaller faction called the Elethroi, which sounds like a made-up British word you'd hear during a football game for absolutely no reason. Nonetheless, Orikos is our third victim. I found another meaty party just right for the plucking, giving us 4 dead nobles in total. only 996 left to go. Often in this game we see rebellions, which are exactly what we need. Here we see the Legetta rebels thinking they can take on the world. Unfortunately for them, I need to murder them all to stop the intermittent shaking. Once I had killed all but one of the rebel nobles, I came across the Scots sieging them where the last noble was trapped. I decided to assist the siege so I could scratch the itch of killing. That went a little bit like this.
Good teamwork.
After running around like a degenerate heroin addict trying to get my next fix, I had realised I was 7 hours into the playthrough and only had the blood of 7 nobles on my hands. Things needed to move quicker lest Themistocles cave in on himself like a dying star when the cravings for beheadings got too strong. To prevent this, I declared war on the western part of the USA and caught Chambadar and Kariji to lacking. What followed was the steadily aggressive dismantling of the Western Empire. The routine was simple: hunt the prey, have chit-chat where they pretend I'm not here to literally execute them, hear that they're slightly disappointed with the options I've given them, part ways. My horse gets the zoomies and runs in circles like a debased ketamine addict, swinging my weapon wildly in any direction as if I'm fighting off the imaginary nightmarish ghosts that resemble that of my ex-girlfriend's OnlyFans account that she kept from me. Consequently, the numbers of your army diminish, and as I start to come round from my seizure, I order my troops to senselessly charge into your positions. Rinsing and repeating this routine led to the absolute annihilation of every single noble they had left. I've no idea what the criteria is that the game decides who inherits these lands after every single noble is dead, but it is a slanderous betrayal akin to the Themistocles and Athenian betrayal of 5th century BC that I did not inherit these lands. To vent my frustrations, I found the most ridiculous music I could on YouTube Library to use it for this beheading edit, or behead it if you're fancy. During this, I found an easy way to execute nobles where I didn't need to mow down their entire army first. This is to talk to my enemy's enemy, my friends, and simply buy their prisoners to be executed. And after looting a whole empire's worth of parties, I am disgustingly rich. Another major efficiency to this playthrough is waiting right by a huge battlefield and not getting involved. Provided our enemy wins, their numbers will be so dwindled, with such a high noble count, it's amazing. I got a sweet offer of 6 for the price of 1 here.
Double kill, triple kill, overkill, kill-tacular.
I've shown the technique of how I deconstruct an enemy army while they're defending, but what about if they attack? Well, a similar strategy is deployed, only this time the time pressure to swing my polearm becomes slightly more overwhelming. Nonetheless, by the time our troops meet to attack, your army has gone from this to this because of this and this. Either way, the Western Empire is no more, completely and utterly brutalized by me. The other empires consider their timbers extremely shivered.
Scary! Shiver my timbers!
I then had a very tricky decision to make. Who will be my next victim? I took a break from taking on the big dogs and decided to take on another rebel faction.
Anyway,
As I had made quite quick work of the Western Empire and become quite familiar with their units and how pathetic they all are, I decided to set my sights on toppling the Northern Empire, which would reduce the USA by 2/3, bringing it in line with the rest of the empires. It was a few noble deaths into this Northern Empire campaign that I got way too cocky and decided to join Canada in besieging a castle through no other reason apart from a crippling desire to spice up this gameplay. It ended with me taking on a Northern Empire army on my own. Losing my entire army, and down to 1 health, I was able to pick off their remaining troops like the f***ing jackal. This gave me a jump start into kicking the Northern Empire into the dust with 4 very high value nobles. Rebuilding my army back up to scratch was no small task. I had to pilgrimage all the way back to Russia to replenish the squires, and since every person of importance in this game wants to see me Chinese water tortured, I didn't have a lot of options in terms of recruitment. I then found a neat trick that would A, get me lots of recruits, and B, train up the lower level troops with a bit of target practice. I call this technique pillaging, but like just the humans for skill level, or Pillagedivsk for short. Commonly, throughout this playthrough, I would refer to my army as the boys, but after such a Pyrrhic victory against the Northern Empire, so many boys lost and replenished. Are they really the boys anymore? The Northern Empire put me through another squeaky bum session as I was downed and forced to nervously watch my banner knights save the day and pay for my ridiculous errors. I had a sudden realization that despite a small 250 hours spent playing this game, I had never actually took part in the storyline, something that actually has something to do with a banner. So I started to hear a couple of nobles out before treating their neck like the end of a carrot. Unfortunately, in order to progress with the storyline, which was completely not worth doing, I had to make peace with the Northern Empire, which cost me a joke amount of money. Anyway, you talk to this lady, and you have to talk to some other guy too, and they send you on a goose chase for pieces of the banner. Then, you essentially choose between aiding the Empire or not the Empire. I made promises to both I fully did not intend to keep. Since I now had the Dragon Banner, I figured it would be me that would inherit the kingdoms after all the nobles had been executed. So I speedran another small rebel faction and found myself sourly disappointed. To express my frustrations, I immediately declared war on the Northern Empire again, mopping up the remaining nobles that were lucky enough to see a few days of peace against clan anti-noble. I handed out one raffle ticket to each of the other kingdoms to see who would inherit these lands, because it's not f***ing going to be me, is it? Russia, here's 1. Scotland, 2. Canada, 3. The remainder of the US, you have 4. China, 5. And Saudi Arabia, 6. Drumroll please. It's 3. Wow, Canada. This is more of a surprise than Trudeau's resignation or all the war crimes your military like to commit for some reason. Seeing as the USA has taken an absolute beating, my next victim I have chosen is Russia. I beelined straight there and stopped a noble dead in her tracks. She for some reason already knew who I was, likely because I've murdered her entire friendship group. I said, if the next thing you say is so, then what is it? I'm going to execute you, your entire bloodline and those related to it, and raffle off your lands to Canada. You had to go and push it, didn't you? I will always remember Russia being so frustrating, as their Vlandian sharpshooters are the most irritating units in the game. I recall the Vlandians' main strategy was to create an initial circle barrier of defense protecting the bulk of their troops in the center. Luckily, they left a kind of invincibility superhighway in between. I chose to exploit this highway a lot. What was this all really for? Why am I doing this? I roam these lands perpetually scratching a murderous itch and loathing these nobles in their castles. Well, I want one. Surely nothing bad can come of this. I found one in a valley that would make it easy to trap nobles in the late game, Castle Ormenfard. While besieging against the very weak and dwindled Vlandia, I was assaulted by a small party.
What the fuck?
It's been a while.
Though their numbers combined with the castle militia and garrison way outnumbered mine, unfortunately for them, I'm able to devastate their numbers without even moving my troops first. In the end, it was Cav superiority that won me the battle, though I managed to kill as many men myself as their entire army did to mine. A few days later, I led an assault after the garrison had died due to starvation and blindly spun my polearm around until the voices in my head stopped shouting. The castle of Ormenfard is now mine, and I will protect it with my life. With a castle, I can form a kingdom, which I did, the kingdom of Croydon. Me and my council members then planned very hard at who we would target after the fall of Russia. After a quick kerfuffle, I found Melind and swiftly removed her head from her body. Before doing this, I gave the remaining kingdoms another raffle ticket. This time, Scotland inherited the lands. What me and my council members had not accounted for is the fact that the entire map is laying awake at night hoping and praying to their gods that my kingdom and everyone in it becomes allergic to the sun and dies from extreme malnutrition. This meant that Saudi Arabia and Scotland declared war on me almost immediately after my kingdom was formed. What does this really mean? It means instead of me chasing them, they will be coming to me. After butchering a huge percentage of the noble population of Scotland, a courier arrived with a peace offer. I pretended to ignore it, cut off another Scottish noble's head and said, fine. I did this only because I was trying for the achievement The King is Pleased, where the player gets 1,000 dinars in tribute in a day. This is a real sign of power that I take no shame in flexing all over the map as I make a beeline to Saudi Arabia to do some more beheading. Initially, I struggled to find a plentiful area full of nobles to kill, so I tried to lure them out by besieging a castle with no real intention of taking it. I stayed there, relentlessly practicing with my trebuchets and scorpions while batting away at offers from boys trying to marry into my family. Even with the walls cracked and hardly any garrison, I waited, and waited, and waited, but no one showed up, so I had to assume they wanted me to have the castle, so I took it. Soon after, The Botanians ran out of money to pay me, so were forced to declare war on me and took back Ormondfire Castle, which I took as a scathing indictment to my personal stature and kingdom. I continued to slaughter both the Scottish and Saudi nobles until I had dwindled the Scottish to such a weak point I decided to rip Castle Ormondfire back. During my siege, the Scots tried to make peace, which I thought was a hilarious joke, and declined while showering off the blood of all their dead nobles. I left my castle there as bait, and filled it with many solid garrison units. Then, the Botanians set the table, lit a few candles, said grace, and proceeded to gobble this bait whole. I waited until their army was so small to attack. I then joined the defence, capturing 4 of their remaining nobles. Finally, I had brought an end to Scotland. No more beautiful highlands. No more irritating music, and no more whiskey, which I'm way too lemon and herbs to drink. So, to recap, 2/3 of the USA, Russia, and Scotland have all been Control, Alt, and Themistocles from the game, meaning that everyone still hates me. We can see this very much by the fact that they have all declared war on me. To add insult to injury, I was caught off guard by a larger Canadian army. Extremely scared of their prior history of war crimes, I panicked and tried to bargain my way out. Some say that you cannot quantify love or hate. In this case, I offered this person every single possession I had, plus nearly 2 million dinars, which was about 1/1000th of how much this person hated me. Luckily, I was able to slip away, losing only few of my men and possessions. I got bored and wanted another castle to add to my small region of control on the map. The Saudis took it back almost immediately, but got way too cocky and tried to take Ormondfire too, where I assaulted their crippling siege camp and captured 7 of their nobles. They loved getting humiliated so much they sent more nobles to try again, getting me closer to finishing this challenge. I then found several more nobles roaming the lands and got ballsy enough to take them head on. I needed to be quite strategic with this battle, so I mounted a small hill defense where the archers were protected by a 76-man shield wall but were low enough to shoot over. The flanks were then protected by 2 Bannerlord skeins. Pretty textbook, to be honest. I then charged immediately into the middle of the enemy army, trying to dwindle their numbers as much as possible before they reached my position, and only ordering my infantry to charge at the last possible moment so my archers could get off a few kills as well. Ideally, I would have had the random access memory in my brain to try and wrap the cav around before ordering a charge, but I didn't. Nonetheless, the sheer quality of my units saw this battle to victory, getting me 7 nobles for the price of 1. I had now rolled up and smoked nearly all of the Saudis, to the point where I was constantly tracking their last seen location and embarking on a wild goose chase around the map to try and murder them. After finally hunting a Saudi with ginger hair, I had destroyed the kingdom. This gave me such immense intrinsic feelings of success and accomplishment. I bought myself a new microphone. Yes, thank you for noticing. Then who of the remaining kingdoms felt they deserved to inherit these lands? Canada. Let's leave them be. They really just need a win, don't they, since Trump literally wants to absorb them. I then quickly sold off a shed load of loot I had stolen off the corpses of hundreds of nobles I had slaughtered. There must have been something about what I had sold to the Canadians, because they did not like it one bit. There was a point where I was topping up my archers when suddenly my relationship with a rebel faction increased. At the exact same moment, a family member of mine's charm skill rose to 89. Something was a little bit sus there. A few moments later, Anita, or
Anita McSween,
gave birth to a child. I don't know who she's married to, but apparently he likes to be cucked by the Bellegarde rebels. What followed was a spree of hours of genuine delirium where I may have lost my sanity completely. Themistocles' shoulder rotator cuff has been getting a little too achy and painful. What, from the several hundred beheadings he has executed? He yearns for a life after this mission. He wishes to settle down and secure his bloodline. Welcome, Lavina Willowbuck. They had many a lovely conversation, though Themistocles has absolutely no riz and nearly gifted her a castle. While this was all taking place, a small yet familiar feeling was starting to grow prominent once more in the corner of Themistocles' heart. He once more felt like killing. So that's exactly what he did. Fighting the Chinese was incredibly satisfying. Their weak mounted units dealt no damage to my Testudo standard and provided a great target for my polearm. Additionally, the AI mounted units don't see trees and collide with them all the time. Anticipating this can lead to some very unfortunate circumstances for my enemy. I got bored once more and tried to take the city closest to my castle. I defeated it by simply having more food than they did. Unfortunately though, they rebelled against me immediately and spawned in 3 more nobles. This was close to the tipping point. It was exactly in this moment I decided to really lock in. I made an ally of some rebels by pawning off one of my family to marry them. I had grown tired of not harassing the Canadians, so chopped away at their noble population. Once more, when I found tracking nobles to be quite time consuming, I besieged another castle close to Ormondford to use as bait again. They assembled a 500 strong army and nibbled at the bait and then ran away. I assembled a few parties to try and take on this giant, which ended exceptionally well. I tracked down the remaining 2 Canadians to Bannerlord and camped outside it, hoping they would come outside and play. I got bored of waiting and besieged the city. Halfway through doing so, the city changed hands, and by default, the 2 Canadian nobles spawned elsewhere on the map, and the game chose to maintain the siege against the Southern Empire. I camped around Bannerlord some more as the city was now mine, but not long after, they too rebelled against me, spawning even more nobles. After days of hunting, battling, and tending cautiously to my execution addiction, I had finally found the last Canadian noble. After swinging my axe, their lands defaulted to a rebel faction, making my map look like this. I took war immediately back to China and what was left of the USA's doorsteps while they were mixed up in their own conflict. I rinsed and repeated every strategy I knew under the sun, because at this point Themistocles has a repetitive strain injury so bad it's taking 3 or 4 swings to complete the decapitation, which is just embarrassing for everyone involved. Remember when I auctioned off a woman from my family to try and make an ally? Well, that very faction has just been absorbed by the Chinese along with that woman, Athene. She assimilates into their ranks and joins an army that I take on. After killing a good 60% of their army by myself, my polearm accidentally kills her too. I took immense pleasure in beheading her alongside 5 other Chinese nobles.
You sure about that? You sure about that? That's why?
The same rebel clan I once tried to ally now controls most of the map, as they switch sides to the USA, making them probably the most annoying clan of all time. Hunting down the final few nobles left in Calradia, I found myself being chased by an army of 300. I called the bannermen and met them halfway across the map. After joining the parties, we turned around and challenged the 300. I could feel the end was coming, so I decided to put myself in harm's way throughout this battle to give the boys a day off. Of the 370 enemies killed that day, 244 of them were at the tip of Themistocles' polearm. A few more kills later, I had nearly done it. I could tell this by the disgusting colours my map had now turned. Funnily enough, the last victim of the USA shared the same name as our first victim of this playthrough. I tracked down the remains of the Chinese dynasties and ended their bloodlines, turning my map into a sea of rebel colours. I had hoped the game would let me finally inherit the lands, but bad karma surrounds Themistocles like a fart in a Dutch oven. Using the encyclopedia, I tracked down multiple rebel nobles that were f***ing like rabbits, as I couldn't seem to kill them quicker than they were breeding. While running around mowing down the family members, I found one lone bandit at the top of the map, standing quietly looking off into the distance introspectively. Was this man real, or a figment of Themistocles' withering imagination conjuring desires of a more peaceful life? I finally tracked down the last noble, a man called Vigotha. Before beheading him, I made a quick save to really savour the moment. There it is, the moment Themistocles had been yearning for years. He can finally rest easy knowing that health insurance delays are no more, knowing that Great Britain will finally get let back into the EU with no negative financial implications, knowing that Temu can no longer run at a loss after the CCP grew tired of funding it to try and compete with Amazon in a spineless attempt to topple the American dollar in the East. Themistocles stumbles across a cave where those that are born for a more peaceful way of life dwell and eat honey all day. Finally! Holy shit. Oh, me. I so truly hope to see you in the next one.